Welcome to Grandma Magic, a podcast from the Grandmother Collective. We're a nonprofit organization that supports and advocates for a world where grandmother's power is seen, cultivated, and activated for positive change. The Grandma Magic podcast is an opportunity to learn more about the unique positions that grandmothers, aunties, and other older women around the world can play in advancing positive social development by talking to and learning from grandmother changemakers. We hope this series inspires you, brings you joy, and helps you recognize the enduring magic and wisdom that comes from grandmothers everywhere. I'm Lindsay Farrell, and I'm your host. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Meenakshi Gupta from Goonj, an organization focused on bridging critical gaps in urban and rural development across India. Meenakshi wears many hats at Goonj, from handling communication and research to engaging in strategic conversations and ecosystem building. She plays a key role in embedding new ideas and ensuring the organization's values are put in practice. With over 2 decades of dedication to Goonj, Meenakshi has been instrumental in steering the organization's growth. In addition to her work with Goonj, Meenakshi is a founding member of Catalyst 2030, a global network of social entrepreneurs. She's served on the juries for various awards, including the Nari Shakti Women Power Awards. She's also a dance movement facilitator, passionate about the well-being of those working tirelessly in the development sector. And before joining Goonj, Meenakshi spent over 15 years in the corporate world, including an 8-year tenure with the BBC. She holds a commerce degree and an advanced degree in communication. I am excited to explore Meenakshi's journey and how her experiences have shaped her commitment to making a difference. Meenakshi, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for putting my life in front of me as something to reflect upon and taking forward. Thank you for the kind words.
So, Meenakshi, this is a question I'm asking everyone this year because we know that older women and women generally play such a key role in ensuring the continuity of traditions and culture. And so we like to ask people, what is some tradition that you feel is really important to be passing down to the next generation and why?
I think the question of tradition is a very difficult one for me to answer, and I'll tell you why. Because my parents come from one part of India, which is Kashmir, and that comes with its own set of traditions and culture and all of that. And then they moved to another part of India, which has its own, of course, context. And then when I was growing up, I grew up in a third city, which is Delhi, which is the capital of India, which has its own culture. And then I got married to somebody who's from another culture, if you like. For me to talk about tradition in terms of what I have been carrying, therefore, in all of these years and what I want to give to my daughter, I have one daughter. I think it is kind of distilled down to something more universal and more fundamental than any of those particular traditions of my lineage. And we have a prayer when we pray. There is a particular prayer that we have, which basically, in English, if I was to translate, it goes that God give me enough so that my family and myself, we are able to live with grace, but also where if somebody comes to my door, I am able to give to that person as well. There's enough that I am able to share with that person as well. So I think that tradition of kindness, of sharing, of compassion is something that I've seen in my mother, in my father. They're very social people, very extremely social people. And same with my husband's side of the family. His father and mother, father was not very religious. If he had to do something nice, if he was happy and he had to kind of express it somehow, he would give something to eat to the rickshaw puller or to somebody on the road who we saw, instead of the usual tradition of going to a temple or a church or some place to give some alms and all. So it is that compassion for the last person, which probably is a tradition which I would want my daughter to carry forward. And no matter what, that sense of humanity, that we should never ever forget that we are humans before we wear any of the other hats of being an Indian or being from North India or wherever. That humanity, the commonness of all of us, is something that I would like my daughter to carry forward. And having come into this work in Goonj, I think has kind of helped us distill all of our traditions from our own upbringing to that, those two, three things that really make sense to us, and which in today's world, when our children are going out and studying in different parts of the world, they're speaking I don't know how many languages, they're getting married to people from different countries and ethnicities. I think that is something she should value, no matter what else.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like that's probably what rooted the work in Goonj, this idea that we should be in reciprocal relationships or in service, it sounds like. So, do you want to talk a little bit about the journey to Goonj? Was this what you set out to do? And how did you end up creating this organization? And maybe even share a little bit more about the organization as well.
So first about Goonj. So Goonj basically was started exactly 25 years ago in 1999, and Anshu and I, my partner, my husband, we started it literally from our own bedroom, from our own home. And we didn't come from, both of us don't come from either a social sector training or any academic background or even any exposure to the sector in our upbringing. So for us, it was like any average person who's studied, done some studying, is doing a corporate job. You have this desire to kind of do something more on a day to day basis, but you don't know how. And you are trying to make sense of what to do with this thing about what you see around us. So we used to travel on our scooter, two-wheeler, to our office, and we could see a lot of homeless people on the roads, and we were like, okay, we have these extra clothes, which is what typically, as a person who doesn't know what else to do, would dip into what do I have. And so we started to think about how to use those clothes to be able to address their homelessness issue, but more directly, they were freezing in winters. Delhi has pretty severe winters. And it started from there. And then this journey of 25 years, basically, Anshu took up the work of Goonj right away, like when we started in 1999. But then somebody had to run the house. So I continued to do my job. And in 2003, 2004, about 4 years into the work, I also then resigned from my job at the BBC. And then I came full time into it. And our daughter was born actually the year Goonj was formed, which is 1999. And so by the time I left, it was a question of first responsibility to my daughter, saying that she's 3 or 4 and she deserves a stable household. She deserves a stable home and an upbringing. And Anshu's work was really building up, Goon's work was building up. My corporate career was really keeping me very busy. And I figured that, if one of us didn't step in for our daughter, it would all be damaged. Our sense of family, our own life would be completely dismantled. And I also figured that Anshu, he was very driven. He is very driven by the purpose of what we are doing with Goonj. So I figured he has a very clear dream and a purpose around Goonj. I was kind of doing the corporate job, but I was not driven like that, that they have to arrive somewhere. So I said, my theory is that if somebody has a dream, either you have a dream yourself or it's best to join people who have a dream. And so for me, it was a question of saying, okay, let me join him. A, for our family, B, for our partnership as a husband and wife, and C, for a larger purpose. So all of those things, and I gave up my job and I got connected, or I joined in with whatever I knew how to do. And that journey of 25 years, I often say it's done more for me than I probably have done for Goons, because it totally transformed me as a person. And I've had my own ups and downs and my own churning about what am I doing here? What am I doing next one show? All of those questions. What am I doing standing in front of this? Now we have about a 1200 plus team. What am I doing standing in front of that line? What is my role as a leader of this organization? And what does it mean for me outside when I go to rural India, when I speak, sit down with women and ask, what does it all mean for me? So I've had my own journey of churning and figuring out. And I realized that while we are partners and all, we are both on our own journey. So I think for me to have that journey, I think Goonj has been excellent. I mean, I'm so grateful for the platform, the space that it provided for me to be who I am today. And Goonj has had its own journey of evolution in that sense, because we were evolving, our thinking was evolving, we were constantly learning. So, what started with those 67 clothes that we had wanted to offer to the homeless people has today become a journey where we've come to understand people with their self respect and dignity, how they can come together as equal stakeholders in the world, how they can value all that they have and design new solutions for themselves to solve their biggest challenges. And that has been the work of Goonj. And it has led to so many amazing outcomes where people in rural India have built bridges for themselves, they've repaired their roads, and they've done n number of things to solve their own problems without any outside expertise or a top down kind of a solution, because Goonj doesn't go into any context with the solution. We don't believe we understand. The local people who are closest to the problems are the ones who understand. So, that being one thing. And the second thing we did was the thing which started with our own personal extra clothes. We've deployed the surplus clothes and all different kinds of material which urban India is kind of discarding or just lying underutilized in urban India. We have deployed that to address the material poverty of rural India, but done it in a way that it's not given as charity, but rural India identifies its own problems, works on those problems, and then they get this material as a reward. So this has been a journey from cloth to dignity, basically, dignity of people.
From cloth to dignity. I mean, what strikes me so much about the story, as I was doing a little bit of background research on your work, what strikes me so much about it is that you took something very simple, which was an asset for you, which was like an available asset, and went through that process yourself so that you have the legitimacy to go to other spaces in your country and say, you literally have the things that you need in order to make the change that you need to make. And I've spent a lot of time looking at development in sub-Saharan Africa. And, we knew in the 70s, 80s, 90s that there was a real challenge of dependency. And I'm sure this is a similar case in India. So, what was happening that you were addressing? What did it look like in India? Not that you started the whole movement towards self reliance, but why do you think that it had gotten to the point that people had forgotten that they had the assets in their communities?
I think in the whole development thinking, we often go to people and ask them about what is it that they don't have or what is it that is most challenging. And so there's a litany of things that are not there. And that's true also of how we see ourselves. If I was to go from the meta to the very, very DNA level conversation, and we kind of flipped the whole conversation. We said, let's talk about what is it that people have? What do I have? And that goes to the conversation about a person's dignity, but also goes back to the conversation of people in rural India, and I'm sure it's true for many other parts of the world. People have so much. They have their indigenous wisdom. They are the ones who are closest to the rivers and forests and land and waters that we are so trying to save in this world now. But they are the ones who have been the closest to it. And so their wisdom about those things is the most valuable. But because we have put ourselves as the experts to go into those contexts and say, we know. It's like, Lindsay, if I was to say to you, Lindsay, I know what problem you have, and I know what solution will work for you, and I will implement that solution for you.
Without your consultation, without asking you.
Yeah, and you'll be like, are you mad? How would you know about my problem? How can you design a solution which will, how do you know it'll work for me? But that's exactly what we do in development. We go into these places with all good intentions. I'm not saying that we are trying to be, mean or bad or anything. We are putting all the resources of the world into this, all the resources, all the passion, all the intention into it. But the involvement or the putting the person who's solving problem we are trying to solve at the center of it is probably what is missing. And that's exactly what Goonj has done. We have said we don't know what problems you will have. We don't know what solutions will work for you. We don't know all that you have with you in terms of what you know, what you can do, what is it that you all have in your own context. And when people are reminded or awakened to that understanding about their own potential and possibility, people do amazing things. And that's what we have not just seen in one or two or three cases, but every year when people take up thousands of such projects across the country. And not just in one part of the country, not in one state of the country, but 27 different states of the country from the north to the south, which, if you know India, Look at the diversity of India. If it works all throughout, that means something universal is being touched upon.
In our grandmother work, we will go into a community and we'll connect with older women and tell them that they're powerful and show them all the ways that there's this universal way in which older women, grandmothers, aunties contribute to their communities. And the number one thing I hear is, thank you for seeing me. Thank you for recognizing me. Because in spaces where we marginalize or make invisible the contributions of people, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, I think. Like if you tell people that they're poor, then they will act as though they have nothing.
I mean, we've seen it not just in the villages of India, but also in the cities of India. And that's why Goonj has grown as a mass movement, because we've actually activated the masses in cities as well as villages. In cities, you look at a common citizen, a grandmother, a senior citizen, a teacher, a homemaker, anyone. And we say, you can contribute with all that you have. It could be your material, it could be your network, it could be what you can do, anything and everything that you have. It need not be only money. Everything that you have has value. And when you do that, when you tell a person you have value, you just come out of a national level volunteer meet. And I asked this question. I said, let's do this exercise. Let's ask ourselves these 5 questions about what can I do? What do I have? What do I know? Who do I know? And what are my dreams and aspirations? And there were a few people and some women who started crying because they didn't have an answer to any of that, because they've not thought about themselves like that. There is a beautiful quote. It is by a lady called Mariana Williamson. And I think it has been quoted by other people as well. So for some people, it'll be something that they've already heard about. So it goes like, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others.
I love it. There's such a challenge with people feeling like that thing that says that if I shine too brightly, others will be jealous or they'll feel inadequate around me. And yet we know from leadership and movements that somebody who's shining attracts others to shine as well. Fascinating. So, you know that I worked at Ashoka for several years, many years, and I know you're connected into the Ashoka network. So, one of the questions that we would often ask people in interviews and in hiring process and finding Ashoka fellows is to pinpoint the moment when they knew that they could make change in the world. And I think that's affiliated with that quote that you just made. What was that moment for you?
I can tell you one of my earliest memories of going into rural India. I remember we were just starting to kind of experiment with this whole idea of using the world's underutilized material as a resource for rural India. And we had just reached out some pros and all to one area, one rural area, and we were visiting after having that distribution having happened. And Anshu and I were really talking to the people, and people started coming and touching our feet, like out of respect and all, the way, a lot of people do in India. If you're wanting to show a lot of gratitude and respect, you will touch someone's feet. And we feel like, what have we done here? We just read a bunch of floats, right? So you're pretty surprised by that kind of and otherwise we were complete strangers to these people. And we hadn't like given them like a big money or anything, just a sack full of clothes maybe. And then we started to understand that that sack full of clothes had gone to these families just before a festival. And in a festival worldwide, buying a new piece of cloth is a thing. I mean, even if you're the poorest, the symbol or the feeling of, oh, I'm celebrating comes from buying a new piece of cloth. And so that was something that they would typically end up doing, but because they didn't have money, they would end up taking a debt from the local money lender and buy something, and the money lender would make it in a way that, on very low EMI they could pay it back. So if you're taking like a 1000 rupees, you could pay back 10 rupees each month or something like that, which on the face of it looks very doable. But because their earnings were so little, monthly earnings were so little, that it was very difficult for them to actually be able to pay back to the money lender. And so that would put them into the debt trap. And many of them would have to then actually become that slave kind of a thing, that because I've not paid you the money, I'll keep working for you. And because coincidentally our cloth bags had gone to that area before the festival, they didn't have to do that. They didn't have to take a debt. They didn't have to take a loan. And so for them, that saving of their lives from that debt trap was why they were touching our feet in gratitude. So many a times you don't even know what it means to the other person, but it gave us glimpse, an insight into how little do we know about what we're doing, how much more of understanding of what is going on here do we need to get. And that's how our journey of learning and relearning or unlearning all of that we knew as an urban person, because for me as an urban person I'd never seen that desperation. So I had to actually give up my own lenses about everything when I went into rural India, and I had to say, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. What are the dynamics? What are the challenges? What are the contexts? So, therefore, for me to offer any kind of a solution, which is a ready made solution, was to me sounded like the most stupidest thing to do.
So actually, by learning that you didn't know, you were able to become somebody that could make change and make a difference. There's some humility in that, right? But like in order to be able to address others' needs, you have to take a step back in your own knowledge.
Don't they say you have to walk in other people's shoes? I mean, those are the things which all of us know. And I think the other thing which really stood out to us, and that happened on the roads of Delhi when we were giving clothes to people in winters, we realized what, as middle class family, coming from middle class family, both of us, and I'm sure this is true worldwide, that in the societal framework, if I see the people in the middle, you know, us middle income, not rich, not poor, but somewhere in the middle, we've both grown up with the thing that, you might have any kind of challenge inside your house. But when you step out of your house, you can't tell the world about it. You need to go out with the iron clothes, with a smile. You have to go with a lot of dignity into the world. And if you notice in COVID, a lot of people who were struggling with that kind of poverty or certain challenge, because they were coming from middle class families, they could not even step out of their homes to ask for food or ask for any kind of help. So we realized that people in rural India, even though they may not have very much, but they put a lot of value on their dignity. That's why farmers and all the people who live in rural India would actually invite you into their homes and ask you if you'd like to have lunch or tea or something, even though they may not have much in their house, but they'll be happy to share it with you. And that you don't see in the cities across the world. I think try knocking on someone's door and saying, I want to have a cup of tea with you. People wouldn't give you such a warm kind of entry into their lives.
You know, one of the things that's emerged here in the United States post pandemic are these things called community fridges. They're not food pantries, right? Food pantries, you have to register, you have to give people your name. Or if you're getting food stamps from our government here in the United States, you have to register, you have to prove that you're poor. It's totally embarrassing and awful and makes people not want to ask for support. But the community fridges are just open, no questions. Nobody cares if you go and take things out of it. People give and they receive and they give and they receive. And it highlights that thing that you're talking about, which is it's almost like we kick people when they're down by reminding them that they're down instead of finding a way to uplift them into that dignity that you're talking about.
And that was also something that we learned in a big way for people affected by disasters. Because when a person is affected by a disaster, a flood or a cyclone, and they're coming out of that place, it's pretty much their dignity is the only thing that they're left with. And when you treat them like a beggar, like just stand in a queue, and whatever I have, you'll have to take it, that is more demeaning or more damaging to the person than the losing of their home. And so I think it's to understand the relevance or the importance of paying attention to dignity in development work more than anything else. That's what Goonj has done. I mean, from cloth, which is a very material need, to dignity, which is a very, very inherent universal need. We talk about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, talk about material needs, and you need talk about this need for self-actualization. And that's how the connection. These are not either ors. You need both of them.
Yeah, you need all of it. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. We talk a lot about the uniqueness of older women's as ages have changed. You're not a grandmother yet, right, Meenakshi?
No.
No, you're probably like, not yet, not yet, right? You want your daughter to go on and do many other things.
I'm grandmother to my daughter's two cats.
Okay, great. You have grand cats. When we had talked before, we were talking about this aging in social entrepreneurship and the shift in what it means to be older women in social change. I wonder if you have any sense about what that has meant to you as you've become more of a veteran in this space.
I think for me, one of the things that we've done consciously, Anshu and myself, and me more because I became a part of the global community and all of that, is to be able to talk authentically about things. Because when you are in your younger years and you're trying to sort of make a career and all of that, you are really burdened by all the you must do this and you must do that and all of that. And I think the level of authenticity with which I speak about myself, what I'm feeling, my own journey, going back to the point about it gives the permission to other people then to be able to talk about their challenges, their sense of how they look at their own lives. So for me, that part has been the most important to highlight. Beyond, of course, talking about the work or beyond ensuring that wherever I am, the women have a voice, all of those things that we try to do for women. But I think our own realization, my own realization about having a role or place in the work of Goonj has kind of opened up my mind to understanding how women need to speak about their roles in the world. And going back to the point about social entrepreneurship, I think there is so much wisdom which comes with having gone through. If you've lived fully or you've expanded your being in your journey, then there is so much of worldview and learning and skills and even tactical things that you have that you're holding in your mind and your heart and in your even your muscle memory. Now that I've done the dance movement facilitation, I know the body also remembers. So there is a lot that you're carrying with you. So to not give that to the world and just go without sharing any of that is such a waste. It's so much value that you can bring to the world. Every day we are trying to figure out how to do this. The younger generation is troubled by all of the worries and wondering, oh my God, the world is going to end. And we can say, no, we've been there. We've many a times gone to the edge and come back because of all the efforts that we put in together. So I think there's a big role to play in terms of sharing the voice, but also sharing some hope that things can be done in a different way. We can come together. Some years ago, there was an incident in Delhi about a girl who was brutally raped. So often the world tend to think of India or Delhi as very unsafe for women. And yet, after that incident, the way the outpouring of men and women, especially women, happened on the roads of Delhi, across the country, so much so that we were able to bring about a very strong law. So while the youth today can talk about the unsafeness and all, but there is some people, some of us who were part of that conversation, who were part of that protesting and churning in conversations and dialogues, can say, yeah, this is possible. You can bring about a law to actually address that. So, yes, there is a possibility for hope. There is a possibility of wisdom that grandmothers, veterans can bring to the world.
It seems now you're moving more. I mean, not that you've given up the Goonj work, but that you have a more global perspective in the work that you're doing. What do you think is next for you? What do you hope to be working on in the next 5, 10 years?
There are just one or two desires that I have. I'm going to take some effort to move towards that. But on a broader basis, I think for me, what we learned through Goonj, and of course, our association with Goonj is like, till we die. But the learnings from that, the insights from that, our feeling today when we sit at 25 years is that it should not only be limited to Goonj. It should go out into the world. It should actually be something that the world can use in different ways, because we found, and Anshu calls it the Aladdin's lamp. If we found a way of unlocking the potential of people as a person, but also as a collective, to be able to touch upon or impact different issues. Now, that should not remain within Goonj. It should be a learning which should go out to more people, should go to different contexts, and people can then, customize it, change it, or whatever. But we feel like it's our responsibility before we go that we should actually share all of that with the world. Now, how we will do that, how much we'll be successful in doing that, I have no idea. So I guess I didn't choose to be in this place, but someone, some larger power put me here. So I guess I'll go with this and see where it takes me.
You seem to have a profound sense of social responsibility.
I seem to have a profound sense of having received a lot from the world. So I want to make sure that I do everything I can to pay back. From a girl who didn't come from any social background or any learning or anything, I was going about living my life as everybody else does. And I became a part of this. God put me into a place where I was exposed to all of that. And whatever little I was able to do, I received so much love. I am so grateful for that. I could not have, if I'd continued with my corporate job or continued with my, small family, you would not have been talking to me. So it is that I've received from the world. So I'm very conscious of that, of this disproportionate gift that I have from the world. I just feel like I need to pay back.